Bob here, Chopper Bob Customs. Want to start out today's video giving a shout out to my longtime friend, Steve Dominguez. Steve Dominguez won the Route 66 Nationals in Chicago, Illinois with his Super Street Camaro. Took home the Wally. It was a busy weekend for him. He nearly choked to death on a piece of steak. Back at home, his twin daughters were involved in a car accident, but Steve got home with the Wally. Congratulations! And today, I have a hat trick of what's in the box. I've got parts coming in on the 58 Delray, and the big box that arrived this morning was from Tanks Incorporated. Tanks Incorporated. And inside the box was another box with the TM48-V, TM48A-V tank for the 58 Chevrolet car. The V indicates that it's set up for fuel injection, and the reason that it's in this box inside the other box is they package all of the accessories separately. So the only thing in this small box was the tank itself. Let me get this out of the way. And the tank was encased in a plastic bag to protect it. And so here is the tank. And I don't know whether you can see it on the video or not, but they've got their name embossed right here on the tanks. And then it's set up with the hole for the sending unit, aftermarket style sending unit, and the hole for the fuel injection unit. Now also in the box, the big box, was the accessories, and I've knocked one of them on the floor here. In order to save money on shipping and to consolidate their line, what Tanks does is, instead of having a dedicated fill nozzle, they have fill nozzles designed for different cars so that the tanks, which may be the same from car to car, can be used on different cars by simply putting on the correct fill neck. And that requires a rubber tube, gasoline-proof tube that is clamped on here and then on the tank. So we've got that in the box. And then also in the box are gaskets for the sending unit and gasket for the fuel pump, and then the screws to hold the fuel pump in place, and I believe there's enough there to hold the sending unit in as well. So that was in the box. And then, I wish I'd have known this when I was purchasing the tank on behalf of the customer of the car. It does include the vent with the integral rollover valve. This makes sure that the tank is properly ventilated so that you don't end up with a vacuum where it won't pump fuel to the fuel injection unit. And it also doesn't expand to the point where something lets loose and you start leaking fuel. In addition to it, it comes with this Y fitting right here, which you install immediately before the vent. And that Y fitting will allow you to use the tank vent as well as the fuel pump unit vent. And we'll get to that in a little bit. And of course, you want this mounted up as high, if not higher, than the fill tube, so that when you fill the tank up, you don't have gas running out of your vent. I know where I'm going to mount this. The nice thing about these early Chevrolets is that the trunk goes forward and then it goes up very steeply, and there's a shelf in the trunk area, and there's a nice spot up in there where this will be protected from the elements. It does have a filter screen in it to keep large debris out, but we also want to locate it in a position where it's less likely to get water and fine dirt up in there. So that came with it. I wish I'd have known this came with the tank. Tanks Incorporated, you need to put this on the list of things that come with the fuel tank. Either that or I missed it because I've got another one of these coming, but I can put that into inventory. That's not an issue. And then the other thing that it comes with is the straps. and you have to have these straps to put this tank in, because this tank is slightly larger than the original tank. I believe it holds, I think it's an extra 2 gallons of gasoline, so it extends your range, but it comes with a brand new set of straps with brand new hardware. So we've got that in the kit. I'm going to set those over here out of the way, because we won't be using them for a while. And then the second box I showed you the other day. Now let's go with the third box. We'll go 1, 3, 2. The sending unit came, and this is a universal sending unit. When I say universal, it is 0 to 30 ohms, which matches the 58 Chevrolet. I'm not sure what the deal is with the fuel gauge in this car. Somebody has put an Autometer aftermarket gauge in it, but it is also a 0 to 30 ohms. So either way, we should be covered with the sending unit, assuming at least one of those gauges works. It comes with a gasket with the mounting screws, so I've got plenty of mounting screws. And the thing about these mounting screws, both on the tanks one and on the sending unit, is that they all have the rubber O-ring on them. So even if you have the gasket on there, fuel can get up around the threads and out the top if you don't have those rubber O-rings. So if you are putting one together without the factory parts, make sure that you get one, get the screws that have the factory O-rings, either that or get some small O-rings and put them on yourself. That's very important. You don't want to have this thing leaking. And so what we've got is, in the package, is a float with an arm, and this float is some form of plastic, which is gasoline resistant, and a lot less likely to cracking, as you saw on the other video. The float on the original sending unit has got a lot of cracks in it. Actually, I showed one in the video. The tank mount with the sending unit, and one of the things you need to notice, and we'll cover it when we're going over the installation, it very definitely says on there float side. You want to make sure you get it on the correct side, because if the float's on the other side, when the float goes up, the sending unit will think you're out of gas, and when the float goes down, the sending unit will think you have a full tank. So it's very important that you get that correct. And then, very important, with the tank as well, it came with instructions, and the sending unit came with instructions on how to install it. And I bring this up because I did do a car here not too long ago where the sending unit was installed completely incorrectly, and it's obvious that whoever did it didn't read the instructions. The instructions aren't necessarily Hemingway or some great writing, and sometimes you have to stop and think about what they say, but they do help you through the installation if you've never done one before. And even when you have done one before, I always read the instructions, because things change over time, and something that you did 4 years ago might not be the same as what you're doing today. And then the final item is the FiTech 50015 Tight Fit Retro Kit. And that includes the cover for the tank that has your fuel pump line attached to it. It has your fuel return line attached to it. It has the bar for mounting the fuel pump to. It has the electrical connector for the fuel pump. It has clearly marked P and R for pressure and return for the fuel lines, the 3/8 or -6 fuel lines that run up to the engine. And then it also has a built-in vent. And so we'll be running a vent from here up to the vent rollover valve, and then we'll also be running one from here on the tank up to the vent rollover valve. And that is because this vent right here is a little bit low in the tank, and it could become covered with fuel. So this one right here will add a extra safety feature. One other thing I might point out is there is a dimple on this tank right here, and that is where the factory vent tube went. I think in the previous video I showed you what they had on there for a vent tube, and if you have one with that vent tube there, what I would definitely do is plug it up. Either that or figure a way to plug this one up and run that one up to the valve and rollover valve and vent. It comes with the sock for an OEM application. It comes with a sock for a baffled tank installation, which is what this right here will be. And that's also something very important on this tank, is that over the stock tank, is that when you accelerate away from a light, your fuel is going to have a tendency to slosh to the back of the tank, and you want a baffle in there to make sure that the amount of fuel is maintained around the fuel pump so that you don't starve the vehicle of fuel. It comes with clamps, set screws, a new fuel pump. This is the big pump, the 340 liter per hour pump. And it comes with more mounting hardware with, this one's got green O-rings for the screws to make sure that you don't have a leak. And it comes with the gaskets and the rings. So we've got all of this. So let's get started with the instructions for this. And I'm going to turn this around so that I can work on it. There you can see that fuel filler neck right there. And by the way, they've upped their game. I've got a tank in my 41, and it was very well done, had a nice finish on it. But this one is almost that powdered coat chrome. You can actually see yourself in this tank. I mean, this is just, I can't recommend tanks, and I paid full price for this. Well, I didn't pay full price for this. My customer paid full price for this. All I did was help him purchase it himself. I cannot be more pleased with tanks. I mean, by the time you get done fooling around with the stock tank, which in this case on the inside was in pretty good shape, but by the time you get done fooling around with it, you still have an inferior product, and you probably have more hours in it than you have in this tank in dollars. So I'm just sold on them, and you need to check them out. They're on the internet, Tanks Inc., and you can pick them up. I think this one, I think he managed to find a reseller on these. It was right at $300. I mean, $325 for most vehicles. You can't go wrong. Anyway, so the first thing that we need to do, and the instructions are set up for this unit, for the fuel pump unit, based on an EFI tank, or it has instructions for the stock tank, where you drill the hole, and you have to drill a series of holes for the bolts, and you have to put the ring in, and you have to watch out to make sure that you're using a thick gasket. You don't have to do any of that with this tank. So the first thing that you do is, in the instructions, and I'm going to try and follow the instructions because I am a big believer in following the instructions. You snap the small filter onto the fuel pump. And one thing that you want to do when you're doing this is to make certain that you're going to have space to do what you're going to do. Because right here, if you notice, if it's mounted with the large end of the sock towards the front of the tank, you're going to be hitting a tube that they have down there in the baffle. So the way you'll want to mount it is like this right here. And to that end, you need to look through the instructions to see what the orientation of this sock is going to be. And basically, the sock is going to be this fill nozzle is going to be underneath of the pressure line like this, and these point to the rear of the vehicle, the pressure and the return line, and this is going to be mounted like this. And so I don't think that's going to be quite right. I think we're going to probably mount like this. No, I know what I'm going to do. It's going to be mounted like this. So what you want is, you want to snap the fuel sock onto the pump, and they don't want it coming off, so it's a little hard to get on. Just like that. Okay. So there, and that will go in there like that, and you will have a good fit for your fuel sock. So that's item one. Now, we need to measure the tank depth. And what I generally do on a deal like this, because I want to make sure that I get an accurate reading, not at an angle or something, is I will go ahead and set my square up on it and then allow it to hit the bottom of the tank. Now that's telling me that basically I'm square with the top of the tank. And I check it probably in a couple locations to make sure that I'm still good, and that is good. Tank at that point is 6 and 13/16 inches deep. So what I'll do then is I'll take, so that I don't forget this, and I'll write it right on the instructions so that I have a record of it, and when the customer gets the vehicle and gets all the instructions, he will get the depth that I measured, 6 and 13/16 inches. Okay. So now what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have the pump located so that the sock is within 1/8 of an inch of the bottom of the tank. Now the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to have to get some Allen screws, is I'm going to turn this bar around, because it's got a dimple running down this side that will be a perfect trough for the fuel pump to sit in when it's installed, and it will also allow then for the fuel line to line up with the inlet of the fuel pump, or the outlet of the fuel pump, I'm sorry. Let me get my Allen wrenches. Let me go get my metric wrenches. Again, I cannot stress this enough. One of these screws has a ground wire on the end of it, and it is grounded through the screw to the housing of the fuel pump assembly, and you want to have that ground good for a couple of reasons. One, the pump probably won't run if it's not grounded, and two, you do not want power going to an ungrounded fuel pump that's sitting in gasoline. I did this was so that the fuel pump can register in that dimple, the bead roll that they've got in it, and have a good purchase, so when you tie it off, it's on there good and solid, and it'll also allow for the fuel nozzle to be in a good location to hook up to the fuel line. And now that I've done that, I think I'm going to go ahead and rotate this sock 180 degrees, because I believe the way I'm going to want to do this when it's all said and done is like this. Okay, yeah, that'll make for, the only reason that you would have to disconnect the electrical line is if you're going to have to replace the pump, and so this is held on with nylon zip ties, and so you're going to be cutting those off and replacing them anyway. So here we go. So now what you want to do is you want the you want the sock approximately 1/8 inch off of the floor of the tank, and basically what that boils down to is the bottom of the pump is going to be right at about 3/4 of an inch off the bottom of the pump. So 6 13/16, we need to be down 6 1/16 at the bottom of the pump, which means that we're going to have to cut a section of this off. And to do that, I'm going to get the gasket. And I believe I'll use the FiTech unit, since it is a foam rubber gasket. And we're going to put it on here and see where 6. Now this doesn't have to be super accurate, because all we're wanting to make sure of is that this bar is long enough, but not too long that it interferes with installing the pump. So I'm going to put a mark at 6 1/16. And I'm going to double check, because you measure twice and you cut once. 6 13/16 to the top of the tank. This one's a little difficult because it's a little hard to see, but like 3/4 of an inch. So this part right here needs to be 6 1/16, 6 1/16. So I need to cut this off right here. Okay. Forgot I was doing fiberglass work with the cutoff wheel, and it was over at the altar. So the one thing that I do want to do is protect these lines, and so I'm going to put a shop towel between the lines and the part that I'm cutting off to protect it from the hot sparks. And then I'll have to be careful not to catch it into the wheel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set this up so that pump, ooh, it's a little warm. The bottom of the sock is 6 11/16 off the bottom of the tank. That's about right there. And so, the fuel line then this is just slightly easier than juggling chainsaws. That's right there. So basically, the fuel line's going to have to be cut about right there. Now, the next part is what makes life interesting, is that this will not fit on there very easily. So what you have to do without overheating the black line back here is you have to set up your heat gun, and you have to warm up the end of the fuel line with the heat gun. So this is the part that always makes me just a tad nervous. And it just dawned on me that I forgot the clamp. But that's okay, I can get a clamp on it. So there is the fuel line in place, and the sock needs to be rotated a little bit, but we're in good shape here. So let me find the clamp. So it's a fairly easy fix. You get the clamp out of the package like you should have done in the first place. You take the screw out, you open it up so it'll slide around the tube, and then you put the screw back in and tighten it up. Of course, the best thing to do is to not forget it and get it installed when you're installing it to begin with. And I think what I'm going to do is take it back off and redo it. And I'll bring it around and show you what I've done here when I get it all squared away. Okay, so there's the clamp, and like I said, it's far easier to put it on here to begin with, but I also put it in so that the screw goes back in out of the way, so it's not catching on the tank when you're dropping it in. And there we have it. Okay, so now let's double check to make sure that we are the correct distance off of the bottom of the tank. Bottom of the tank, so we're in good shape there. And now we will okay, the black hose needs to be 1/4 inch off the tank floor. cut at a 45-degree angle. So that is 6 9/16 off of the floor. And it needs to be cut at a 45-degree angle. And to keep it from causing any problems with the sock, I'm probably going to cut it away from the sock. Get your wires out of the way because you don't want to cut them. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to approximate a 45-degree angle. There we go. So that's that. So now it says to use 2 tie wraps, and they included one in the package, which fell into the tank. Okay, I didn't know how long that was going to take. I dug around in the tank with one of these and managed to snag the one that was in there, and then by diligently looking in the packaging, I found the one that I thought was missing, but they were both in the box. And so I'm going to go ahead and secure this fuel pump. So the final thing then is to plug the electrical connector in, and that will come around here like this. You're going to have to put a little bit of bend in the wires because it is sort of a tight clearance. These pumps and tank kits are made for a wide variety of tanks and make it click. And so there you have I think what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to zip tie that to the return hose and go grab a zip tie. Ready to install in the tank. And what we will do is we'll go ahead and feed the sock in and the return line and the wiring and the zip ties. And it's a snug fit, so don't be surprised if you have to do a little bit of finagling to get it in there. One thing that I always forget to do, but if you can remember to do it beforehand, these gaskets are die cut and the little nub remains in them where the mounting bolt is supposed to go. And as you can see, since I forgot them, they're fairly easy to get out, but it's easier if you do it well, this is all disassembled. So alright, so let's line the hole up, line that up. That is the manufacturer that did that. They put the clamp so that it interferes with the edge of the tank, but it's loose enough that you can rotate it around out of the way. So there, that makes for a good fit. Let's see if I can get that past that tube. There. All right, I think we got a good purchase on getting it in here. So now we will Not sure whether the tank screws are long enough. Let's see what I got. No, the tank screws are not long enough. So we'll have to use the FiTech screws. Let's see if they say how to assemble this with the FiTech screws. So you put the rubber O-ring on the screw and you get it started. And you do this 6 times. Fuel pump installed, return line, vent line, and we're ready to go. The great thing about this is they give you extra O-rings for future servicing if you need to, and the starred nuts are if you're using a stock tank where you put the ring in from the underneath side with the screws attached into it. So, let's see where we're at as far as time. Let's see if my lunch is ready. Yes, my lunch is ready. So we're going to break right here. I'll be back in a bit. You'll be back in a very short period of time. Stay tuned. Okay, before I left for lunch, I went ahead and taped over all the openings. We've got mud daubers around here, and they just get into everything. So, ready to put the sending unit into the tank. This bar right here needs to be taken out and removed completely on this tank. And the instructions don't necessarily tell you how to do this. It just tells you that you need to make it so that this point of the sending unit is halfway down the tank. And that means that you're going to have parts that you basically are no longer going to use on this installation. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and pull the sending unit and they give you some extra wire so that you can slide it off, and you work your way down. You be gentle with the wire so that you don't damage it. Now with that completely taken off, then this bar right here needs to be removed. That will not be used. Instructions. And basically it shows from this flange right here, you need to be half the tank depth plus 1/8 of an inch. And so we're going to go ahead and check it again on this side because this might be different than the other side. And it's a little bit different. It is 6 15/16. So the tank depth is 6 15/16. And it says right here in the instructions that this sending unit is for tanks from 6 inches to 15.5 inches. So it's designed to fit a wide range of tanks. So half of 6 15/16 is 3 and 15/32, which is just slightly less than half an inch. And if you add 1/8 of an inch to that, that's 3 19/32. And that is from this flange to the center of this pivot. This may actually be one of the ones where you are going to be hard pressed to get it all the way up. Instructions say that it is for tanks 6 inches deep. So 6 divided by 2 would be 3, plus 1/8 would be 3 1/8. And I cannot get it to 3 1/8 with both screws in there. So what I will probably do is I will probably elongate that hole slightly. I don't see any other way around it than to do that. Double check see if I can take a different read on this. That puts it at 3 1/2 plus 1/8 is 3 5/8. And it is right there. So basically this is adjusted to the very end, and because the bottom of the tank slopes away from it, I'm going to be okay doing it that way. So basically snug those down. Now, the one thing that I want to check to see is, will this go in the tank and actually bottom out on the flange as opposed to hitting the bottom of the tank. Just to keep life interesting, the holes only line up one way on the flange. So I'm going to make a mark because I basically want the float to fall somewhere into this range right here so that it's not interfering with the baffle in this unit and it's not interfering with the side of the tank over here. So let's make a mark on it so that I know where it is, and then we will look and see where it is lined up. Got the float coming out on this side of the tank, and I can probably live with that, assuming that when I set the float up it's not too long. So, so the proper way to set float is that with the gasket on the flange, you want the float to be at the same plane as the gasket. So we take the screwdriver, We take the shipping rod out, the rod that they put in it to keep it from overturning while it's in shipment. And we put the float in, again making sure that it is on the float side. Snug this up just a little bit. And this is close, and so the thing that I want to see right off the bat, that float is going to operate in this area of the tank over here. Now, the thing about this is that this sits down into the tank, which means that this float can actually come up into this area of the tank. Here's the thing. You don't want to get below 1/8 of the tank because you want the pump to be immersed in fuel. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that this right here, which is about 1.25 inches down from the top of the tank, is going to be the full setting, which means that the bottom of the tank will be the empty setting. Which means that when you're driving the car and you first put fuel in it, filling it up, it's going to register that it is full, and then it's going to stay full for a long time while it's being driven. Basically, probably until you get down to about 7/8 of a tank, it's going to show that it's full. And so 7/8 of a tank will be full, and then it'll continue to drop down until it's empty, which will be at or right at the bottom of the tank. So let's see if we can't get this set so that it's the right length. You want that float to basically touch a straight edge that is on the same plane as the face of the gasket. So I need to come down just a little bit. Sometimes when you tighten it up, it moves. If we've done everything correctly, the float should be six and 7/8 at full drop, which it is. So there we've got the float set at the proper height to get full travel from full to empty. It is on the float side, which is spelled out right here. And now what we need to do, we need to make sure that it's good and tight, and we need to cut this arm off just beyond the stop so that the stop will still catch it, but the arm won't interfere with getting it in the tank. There is the assembled float for this car. Now, getting it into the hole can be tricky. And here we run into the next thing that we see with it. This, the float will go in, however this right here is too long for the opening for the tank. So we're going to have to trim this unit off, and I will hope that I can leave a connection between the two, that I don't have two independent bars flapping down there by themselves. There's been some tanks where I've had to cut this up fairly high to get it into the tank. It's just the nature of the beast. What I did there at the very end was I cut the corner off to make it hopefully go in to the tank. We shall see if I was successful. And there it goes. Set. I'm going to take one quick look at it here. To bolt it down. The tank is ready for the vent lines to be connected, the pressure and return lines to be connected, the electrical connections for the pump to be connected, and the electrical connections for the sending unit to be connected. So we are ready to install it in the car. Well, we're going to set it up, not necessarily install it right away, but what I need to do is I need to make sure that the lines that I'm going to have on the car line up with where they need to be on the car. So one final thing that I've done before I go fit this up underneath the car is that I have put some 5/16 inch hose on here and on here. This is the vent on the fuel pump assembly, and this is the vent in the tank. And this is the one place on this system where you can use the fuel line that says it's not for fuel injection units, because this is definitely a low pressure situation right here. The pressure line and the return line need to be rated for fuel injection units. I know a lot of guys say, well, the return line is just dumping back in the tank, it's never under pressure. But that being said, if you have the return line pinched on the outlet side of a piece of rubber fuel line, what will happen is that rubber fuel line will burst. If in a return situation, it'll burst. The fuel injection unit will not recognize that you're not dumping fuel back in the tank, that you're dumping it out on the ground, and that's just a bad situation. So you need to be safe on the actual fuel supply and the fuel return lines to use stuff that's rated for fuel injection. But this vent right here, this is truly, there's no way that the pressure from the pump is going to get into these vent lines. And so you can use the less expensive, and you're not using a whole lot, so if you have some fuel injection rubber line laying around, that's great. And then I'm going to be going from it up to the rubber lines on the actual vent rollover valve with 5/16 inch steel line. And so I'm going to be getting under the car and forming it. So that's where I'm going now. I'm going to, next time you see me on this video, assuming that I do it on this video, I will be under the car forming vent return lines. So going handheld for just a little bit here. So I've got the tank set up in the car. It's held up with the jack. Yeah, there. And I've gone ahead and made a vent tube. Now this is the tank vent. This is not the fuel pump vent, because the fuel pump vent's got well, they're a little bit more than 90. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over to the bench. I know that I can basically put my fingers in there to the knuckles to hold this up against the floor. That'll get me close enough to where I can take the fuel pump vent and bring it out parallel to this and have it come in and connect to this part of the Y right here. And then of course what I'll do to hold the whole thing together is I'm going to put a bracket on the vent rollover valve that will attach it to the floor here. I'll get on the inside and put a couple of machine screws through, put nuts on this side,
and we'll get her set in there so that this will be held in place. And I'll probably make it with a shield so that it'll cover it, so that stuff splashing up against it won't get into the vent hole, which is clear up at the very top here. So at any rate, so I'm going to be pulling the tank down and taking it to the workbench to build this next a little bit.
So I'm back over at the bench, and I've gone ahead and I've installed, well, I've placed the tube that I've bent for the fuel line, or the fuel adapter vent. I put it in here, and I'm getting ready to put the bend in the end of it here for coming up and joining into this, the Y. So what I've done here is I've cut it to the length I want. What you saw me doing was using a tubing cutter, a little Mighty Mite, and then I cleaned the burr out of it with what's left of my regular tubing cutter. I need to find a wheel for it. I don't know whether I can find a wheel for it or not. And then I put it in the tubing flaring tool. And the reason I did that, I don't have a bubble flaring tool. I need to get one. But what I do is I use the double flaring tool, and I don't go in all the way to do the bubble on it, but it puts a nice little bubble on the end of the tube that catches the clamp when you put it in there. So this works for me until I can spend the money to get a bubble flaring tool. So, and then I could not find any double place, I couldn't find any single place T-clamps in red. I got blue, the blue single clamp, the single place blues have come in, and then I've got some anodized aluminum two-place for -6 line coming in. Unfortunately, I can't find any blue 5/16, so this is going to be hidden up under the fuel tank to separate those two lines that I just made. So hopefully no one will notice it. I don't think anyone will. But anyway, so I'm reaching the point again where I am out of parts. So I'm going to test fit this, make sure that it's going to work, and then I'm going to have to run and get some parts locally. I've got other stuff coming in on purchases online. I'll tell you what, right now with the supply chain, it's hit and miss. Sometimes you can find what you're looking for, and sometimes you can't. But right now I've got 2 more shipments. I'm waiting for parts of items that my customer has ordered. And then I'm going to have to go get some hose clamps. But I want to kind of get this, make sure that it's going to work. There we have it. Like I said, it needs to be clamped. I still have to put one bubble on I have to put a bubble in this one right here, but the rest of them are ready to go with clamps, and then I'll be building a bracket up here on the vent and rollover. But for right now, that's as far as I can get today. So listen, again, like, subscribe, comment. We're growing out there. I think people are liking what I'm doing. If you don't like what I'm doing, tell me what you'd like to see me do different. We're having a good time doing this, and hopefully we're all learning something. I know I'm learning something. I hope you're learning something as I'm going along here. And as soon as my stuff gets in, I'll be doing the braided stainless and the ends for this. I still have to decide whether the tubing that is on the car, which somebody did replace the 5/16 with a 3/8 line, but I'm not sure whether it's going to work for this application or not. I've got to get underneath of there, and that's going to be a chore to get that line on. You're going to hear a lot of music because it's just going to be a bunch of sliding in and out of the car and putting bends and tubing and trying to drill holes and mount clamps to hold it in place. So that's going to be an interesting video because basically this is an X-frame car, and getting it all lined out in there is going to be a challenge. So keep your eyes open for that. And like I said, like the videos, comment on the videos, but by all means smash that subscribe button and get notifications. Hit notifications so that you'll know when a new video pops up. I've been putting them out there on a fairly regular basis now. I've had a couple weeks downtime, so I'm kind of playing catch up. So at any rate, that's it for today. Chopper Bob out.